Brew Nation. Sorry, let me start over. It's Latinos in Clinical Research. I did like 5 podcasts today. Hold on.
At least you got it.
Yeah, I cut it. Let me make sure I got Jen's profile. Okay, here we go. Latinos in Clinical Research, welcome to another monthly webinar. If you're watching this later, all you got to do, you got to go to latinosinclinicalresearch.com and hit subscribe. You'll get notified of emails when we have our monthly guests on. Today's guest is awesome. She's Jen Pages. She's a project manager at Icon, and I had her on my podcast a couple months back, and you resonated with a lot of people, Jen. So
Thank you.
even though that was recently, a lot's changed in the industry since then. Like when we first did our podcast, maybe at the beginning of the year, maybe it was even later last year, there was only like hints of hiring slowdown, of layoffs, and now there's no hints anymore. It's just front and center. Everyone except sites really are hiring freeze, laying people off. I think sites, maybe some tech vendors are the only ones like actually hiring, or some smaller CROs. So some biotechs as well, small ones. What has it been like at Icon? I mean, you're in a project management role. That's one that also has been seeing a lot of like layoffs, or at least hiring freezes. I know project management assistant as
Definitely.
well.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely hiring freezes. I haven't heard of many layoffs for project managers yet, but I do see kind of like it may happen to some, it may not. They're still, I think, trying to figure out how, I guess, to outsource the position. But as of right now, project managers are still pretty okay. Studies have also slowed down a bit, so that's also what's causing kind of like the layoffs, because there's not enough studies for the amount of project managers that are currently hired.
Not enough studies for the current amount of, okay. And what do you think about in Latin America? Like there's this shift towards all these jobs being outsourced overseas, like support roles.
I actually like it. I know it sounds a little contradictory to like what most people think, but although a lot of the US workers were pretty good workers and things like that, very educated, they were also very, I guess, kind of to like the point, like this is my job, this isn't part of my job, I'm not going to do that kind of thing. And like which you're seeing more with the Latin American like outsourcing positions and stuff like that, is that they're more willing to go above and beyond and more willing actually to help outside of their job description a little bit. I'm not saying that there isn't any in the US, because there is, but I'm just saying it's a little more prominent.
Yeah, Monica and I talked about it earlier. Monica, you had some really good stuff before we started recording for Jen.
Oh, you mean that what we spoke about yesterday, or what we were going to talk about then?
Today, but you sound like a robot right now. We'll get back to Monica. Hold on.
Okay.
Jen, what kind of studies are you seeing? Are you seeing a slowdown? Like, let's talk about CRO. Are you seeing a slowdown as far as the amount of studies you or your colleagues are seeing?
It's not that there's like a necessary slowdown, but at least I can only speak for, certain places, but there aren't as many studies for sure coming in, I guess. So if you're kind of like not allocated a certain amount, like, you're kind of worried, like, okay, wait, what do I have to do to get on more and things like that.
Do you have
For
colleagues that
me,
are worried?
I do. There's conversations, yeah.
But in your case, like you seem to.
No, unfortunately, I'm on 6 studies, so I don't really have that worry. I kind of wish I could get rid of some, but it's okay. I like all my studies, and I love my job in the sense where I just really love helping like sponsors kind of get their studies rolling and kind of mitigating risk and things like that. So I enjoy it.
Okay.
Do, do you see
Monica,
the
you're back.
studies
Good.
slow down? Like, I mean that we're not gonna be getting as much studies as before, or how? Yeah, I would like to deep dive a little bit more on that.
No, I think what there is that there's just more competition. There's a lot of smaller CROs coming up. and a lot of, I think just a lot of, I guess, competition. And I think, how to explain it, there's not a slowdown of studies because I do know that there's a lot of studies still in the pipeline and still coming up. But I think it's just more competition. There is a lot of startup CROs that are maybe charging a little bit less or doing other things that the larger CROs aren't able to do. Like, I know that sometimes there's like a disconnect within like larger CROs, like within their own departments, like contracts, or like let's say study startup is not the same as the cleanups team, where they're kind of like they don't really have the same goals. And I think that's what's hurting kind of some CROs over others.
Are sponsors also kind of onboarding the studies more so than offloading them to CROs as well?
Yeah, I've also seen sponsors more doing like contracting. So instead of going to CROs or things like that, they're just contracting project managers for that one study, or contracting CRAs and things like that. So they're just kind of like going, I guess, solo in a sense, where they're not looking for so much CROs help. CROs are supposed to kind of provide that expertise, with things that the sponsor doesn't know how to do, how to run the study, that the CRO is supposed to do that. But I think that they're just kind of outsourcing a little bit more by just contracting people individually that they know that they've worked with that can help them.
Same kind of thing happened about 8 years ago, plus or minus 2 years, where CROs were kind of dying off or being replaced by sponsors taking on the work themselves. And then they kind of made a comeback over the last few years. I don't know if that was COVID related or not, but sounds like you're saying that might be going back to the way it was 8 years ago, potentially.
I think it's part of like the whole industry process. So I've been in clinical research for a while, and I feel like it's been like a cycle. Sometimes they go, to CROs, and then they're like, well, I could do it on my own. And then they do. And then they're like, no, I need a CRO to help. This is too much. And then it's just kind of like a cycle.
I
Just
think
back and forth.
I think it goes with the financial cycle too.
Yeah.
Because that way they try to cut where the money is going the most, to reduce those investments, and make it more profitable or less expensive. So
Yeah.
that's probably one of the reasons. Because if you say around 8 years ago, well, probably the last economic was
Great Recession.
yeah, was like
Monica, I think your mic still sounds like robotic. I don't know what's going on.
I'm gonna
Her
change
new
it.
nickname is Mr. Roboto. Mrs. Roboto, sorry.
There you go. Jen, you're in the respiratory, or you have you have different therapeutic areas, or you're
Yeah,
just
I
one?
have different. So I do
Okay.
oncology, I do endocrinology, I do eye ophthalmology, I do rare disease. Yeah.
Okay. I think last podcast there was a study we were gonna get. We ended up getting it.
Oh yeah, I think you told me. Yeah. It was
We're
a
on that.
COPD or something like that, respiratory.
COPD. Chris just did our budget. A masterful job, Chris, by the way. Thank you. Do you get involved in the budgets at all with sites? You do?
Yeah. So for one of the studies I was just on, the sponsor actually asked me to be that line of escalation before them. So I
Whoa, okay.
actually,
So
yeah,
you
I
might have
actually,
talked to Chris without knowing it at some point. Does the name ring a
no,
bell? No? Chris, did you ever negotiate with Jen? Maybe not.
no, no, I
Okay.
wasn't.
Okay. The do you have any advice for sites that are trying to? I guess you're the last line before it escalates to the sponsor. So when sites approach you, I'm assuming.
It's not normal practice though, where the project manager does that. It's
Okay.
just the sponsor was just trusting my experience at a site to really determine whether or not what they're asking for is real, or if it's just them kind of like exploiting the situation in a sense. So they were just asking me for like basically just, can you go over it and just tell us what you think, and kind of thing. So it's like but usually the project manager isn't involved.
But for example, if a site is showing extremely good results in a study, that part the site is part of that study with you, and you see that this site is performing really well, and probably maybe that site asks you, hey, and do you happen to know if there is any other study in this therapeutic area that you would recommend? What would you do in that scenario?
Oh, so me, you're
Yeah.
asking me. I come from a site level, my mom owned the site. So me, I will go around asking everyone who's having trouble with recruitment, all the other project managers, asking them if they need another site. But that's me.
Okay, so now that you went in this direction, I would
Mhm.
like to ask two questions. First of all, I would love to hear how was your clinical research experience, how did you start it? How was that beginning and then the transition?
The beginning was my mom opened a site. So I kind of always did my, those take your child to school day. Okay, so that was me going to my mom's job where she was like the research, like the office manager at research sites, and I would help her with regulatory and filing and doing all those things. So like I kind of already knew the lingo. And then one day my mom decided, I'm not gonna make anyone else money. I want to do it for myself. And she opened up her own site. So she quit her job and opened up her own site. It was rough. I had like 3 jobs and I was still working at the site with her, but it was small. So we basically did everything. So I was the budget contract if I had to be. I was the coordinator. I was the phlebotomist. I was basically everything with her experience. So I learned a lot because she already had like 10 to 14 years experience in research. So it was easy to learn from someone with that much experience. And then during COVID, when COVID hit, obviously, some sites did really bad. Like if you weren't getting the COVID studies, you didn't have any study because they put every study on pause. And that's what happened. And so I started looking for a job on the CRO sponsor side. And I applied for like a year. I did like 40 interviews. And finally, Icon gave me that chance. And I was able to start as a CTM, basically. So a clinical trial manager. I skipped the whole CRA role because I had just had a kid and I was like, I can't, you know, I can't fly around and stuff like that. So they ended up hiring me for the CTM role. And ever since then, I look at my position and I'm like, oh, but that's going to be so hard on the site. Are you sure you want to do that way? We could probably do it this way. And like, so that the transition has been actually so easy. Like, I don't know. It's so different, like seeing it from like the other side. But I was such a hands-on like coordinator anyway. So like when things are happening now as like a project manager, like if there's like risk or whatever, I'm like, oh, this is going to be easier for the site. This is going to be cheaper for you. The labs cost about this much. And it's like I have all of the details.
I love to hear that because it's
Yeah.
refreshing for the sites to know that the person in charge of the study has that background. I actually have one a project manager like you that she has a site background, and it's totally different talking to her to a project manager that has no idea or doesn't have that experience. And in
Mm-hmm.
addition to that, the experience is from your heart because it was your mom's side. I love that. I absolutely love that about your story. So basically, you went from being a coordinator to a project manager in 4 years.
Mm, in 2 years. Less than 2 years. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. That's amazing.
I just
Okay.
had a lot of experience like as a coordinator. So like I had 12 years experience basically in under like my belt. So they were a little more prone to accept that jump because
Course.
I had that many years. But yeah, I basically went like I got hired as a CTM and within a year and a half I was a project manager.
Wow, that's amazing. But you also make it happen because I know people
Yeah.
that have been, with the same
Yeah.
situation, a lot of experience, and they have not been able to move. So, what make you different?
I'm not. I like to make sure everyone's happy, just in my personal life and like everything is just my personality. So when a sponsor is upset or when a sponsor is not happy with like the work, I really go the extra mile to make sure that they are. And I think that's really what makes a difference. And then obviously the sites are what helps everyone in the sense be successful, right? So like if I'm on a study and a site, I have 3 sites that are problem sites, right? And they're just not entering data or they're not answering queries or whatever it is, right? But we need them. I don't take the approach as like, oh, you have to do this, blah, blah, you were gonna ask. I don't take that approach. I actually take the approach where I'm like, hey, what can we do to help you make sure that you can enter this information for us? So being that whole team, right, where it's not just one. So I'm not just a team with Icon, I'm a team with the sponsor. Like I feel like they're my counterparts too. And then I'm also a team with the sites because we need the sites too. So being able to see it as like the whole picture, I think is what makes me a little bit different. I'm not saying that other people don't do it, but I feel like that's really what sets it apart because like when the sponsor tells me, hey, we need a certain amount of patients by this date because FDA is requiring it, then like in my mind, it's like we need to do that because if not, they're gonna lose the whole study. So I take it like if it's my study and I make sure that we make it happen, you know. So it's just a matter of like really loving
What you do.
everything about like what you do and just making it a passion to make everybody happy. So sponsors are happy, that's good. The sites are happy, they'll do more work for you. And if your team's happy, they'll also help go out of the way to help make sure that the study's a success.
Okay, when you were talking about your current job and that you have 6 different studies, I hear that you have different therapeutic areas. Or I mean, so you're basically like Dan always says, you're a multi-specialist, like a generalist. How do you ended up doing this different, or how do you acquire that experience in those different therapeutic areas? Or how did you manage for the CRO to give you completely different therapeutic areas?
Honestly, I started and they gave me oncology, and I didn't have an ounce of oncology experience. Like, not even at the site level, I didn't have any. And I just did it and figured it out and was like, okay, what is needed? And I mean, for me, reading a protocol is reading a protocol, right? So, like, whether it's oncology or not, it's just one has more procedures than another one. One's patients are a little more ill than the others, need a little more help. And then it's just being able to adjust like your mindset to that. So like, okay, it's a oncology trial, right? I'm gonna make sure I pay more attention to safety because there's more of a safety risk. And then so it's like I would get rare disease, right? So I did a lot of rare disease as well as a CTM and project manager. Same thing. Why? Like the whole reason is why are they doing the study? And I feel like that helps like really put into perspective how important what you're doing is. That whole why they're doing this because there's not a cure or there's not a treatment for this. Like, so we have to make sure that it works because this could help so many people. So that's the perspective that I kind of use. So whether it's oncology or whether it's ophthalmology, that it's just checking how something that's already approved work, it's just understanding the why behind it.
Okay, and I mean, obviously you have different studies, but if you see it in general, those studies that you're working on, how is the sites doing on those studies under your command?
Um, I mean, there's still obviously problem sites and stuff like that. And I always try to let the CRAs and the CTM kind of take the lead and all that. But I'm always right there, like, are you sure you don't want me to call? Are you sure you don't want me? But for the most part, sites, it's rough. I have a lot of sites that have emailed angrily when I'm asking them to enter anything. Well, we don't have time to do this. And it's like, well, that's not what you told us. You told us that you had plenty of time to do this study. So I really need you to try to help. And then so what I do is I always leverage like, oh, do you need us to send someone as support to help you enter data? Or, try to just find a way around it. Because I understand that it's not the coordinators that are choosing the studies, it's the owner or the director, the manager. So it's not the coordinator's fault that they're overwhelmed. So it's always just trying to figure out how we can work around the fact that they're overwhelmed. So, and the
Okay,
sponsors do provide like, those services where they can give you like a research assistant for the study where they'll enter data for you and stuff like that. So,
oh, that's awesome, obviously. But and for example, for not for example, but for a sponsor or for a CRO, what it seems like a problematic site. I would love to hear that.
when okay, I actually was talking about this the other day, but when an action item or a query or anything like that has a birthday, then you know your problem site. Like there's no reason a sponsor should be waiting for an updated delegation log 365 days later. Like there's no way. Or like there's a query that's been open for over 100 something days. Like, are you like, no, like that's definitely problem site. So things like that. Like if you haven't entered for a visit and it's been like 2 weeks, like start thinking that you're a problem site because you're getting there. So just little things like that. Like that's the biggest one though. If something is aging so much that it's having a birthday, like yeah, that you should definitely be worried. It's actually a joke that I do with some of my study team members. I send like a little like confetti thing and I'm like, oh, this action item is having a birthday. Can we please try to make sure it's resolved before its birthday things? And then, so it's just I try to add some humor to it.
Very interesting. I mean, obviously, that's
Happy
part of the
birthday, guys.
responsibility, right?
Happy birthday, sites. You just said it, Jen, that it's usually not the coordinator's fault that they're the ones that are overworked, etc. I imagine it's not normal for you to interact with the coordinators until there's a problem, but do you ever go just straight to the site director instead? Or do you have to ask permission, or do you have like a list
So
and
it
you'll know?
depends. It depends. So I usually don't have the site director's contact actually. So we only get the contact information that you guys put either on the delegation log or that site contact list. Usually what we ask for in the beginning of studies. So we usually won't even have the director, but we do have the PIs. So when we're sending out emails, we'll always like CC the PI if there's problems. But we usually don't have the site director's email or phone number,
Okay.
which is a good idea to give because they're probably the ones that would probably help the most.
Yeah, I tend to ask my CRAs like how we're doing, and then if I hear like hints of, this, but everything's good, but then I go back to the coordinator and I tell them, hey, well, we can't be having this, you need to be on top of these things. Jen, this is Latinos in Clinical Research. Our mission is to get more Latinos in clinical trials via helping other Latinos, empowering them to work at sites, start businesses, work at CROs like you, work at sponsors. In your experience, because you have unique experience now as
Mhm.
as a PM and as somebody that worked at a site and as a site owner yourself. I mean, through your mom, but still site owner.
Yeah,
What do you think is the issue with Latinos not joining studies at the rate that we want them to?
as patients, right?
Yeah, yeah, as
Okay.
patients.
Because the ones that are willing to are the ones that you don't kind of want in the study because they're going around to every site and joining studies. Um, but I think the biggest really issue is that Latinos, well, at least for my demographics, Cubans, we don't really go to the doctor, especially the men. They don't really go to doctor and stuff like that. So it's really hard for them to even think about going to a research study that they feel like, why would I do that? Like, I don't even know what it's going to do to me, kind of thing. So it's kind of just like, oh no, I don't go to the doctor, so why would I go to research study kind of thing. I think that for me, for like my area, like where I'm at, Miami, that there's a lot of Cubans, I think that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, border town with Mexico, fairly common as well, from what we're seeing. And Monica and Chris and Judy can tell you the same from their sites. It's tends to be pretty much across the board. What can we do? Like, what do you think are some possible solutions to
Educating
this?
them. I think creating outlets where, I know that a lot of our videos, like your videos and a lot of videos in clinical research is kind of focusing on the clinical research professionals, but I don't see a lot of videos out there focusing on patients, right? Like informing the patients, like
Mm-mm.
maybe doing like a outreach to, in Spanish, hey, you don't know what clinical research is, or oh, are you interested in this, or like just explaining the process, giving ideas, or just like showing them, hey, look, this is very regulated, this is very controlled, like nothing bad's gonna happen to you, and if it does, like we will make sure that you're off, and we're gonna make sure you have like what you need throughout the whole process until you're better, like I think things like that really help educate not just Latinos, if you really think about it, but a lot of people in general. And like, it's so important because clinical research is so important. Like, without clinical research, we would have no antibiotics, we'd have no vaccines, we'd have no treatments, no Tylenol, no, like a lot of things. So I feel like just being able to make videos that focus on patients, education, and just teaching them, hey, look, you're gonna be completely monitored at all times based on the risk of the study. So it's like, being able to provide that education really would help people understand that we're like, research is not out there to just have guinea pigs, is like literally what they say, but it's to make sure that we have good treatments that are going to work, but we need enough data for that. So that's why it's so important to educate people that can be potential patients. I actually have stats. So did you know only 5 patients that would qualify for a study actually get into the study? Not even 5%, but like 5% are aware of it, are aware that there's a study going on. The other 95% don't even have an idea what clinical research
Yeah, they
is.
don't know the first thing about it. I know. When we
Exactly.
and Linda says, yeah, Jen hit on the spot, educate them. We know because we work in the industry. Linda's in LA. She's a cool person. You gotta be on the pod soon, Linda. I struggle explaining how important it is to my own family, let alone a stranger.
Yeah.
We need to know
Mm-hmm.
how to reach them. I have the same issue too with some of my
Yeah.
in-laws, and they're in the studies, and it's like hard enough to explain to people that are like family, let alone strangers. Monica and Judy do a good job, um,
Yeah. Mhm.
community
Uh,
awareness. I think it happens on a local level.
yeah, I have done videos in Spanish for that. I did a lot of videos with that, and then I did some videos
But what
on
was the
my
feedback though?
Spanish
What was the
channel.
feedback like? Because I've
So
done
on
videos
that,
before. Like originally, Guru was supposed to be for patients. Way back
Mm,
in the day, it wasn't about for you guys. It was to how do I get more patients in my studies? So I tried to make things like what is an informed consent? No one watched it. The
mm,
only people watching were other sites. Like, hey, how about do a video on this? And I was like, well, that's what kind of patient is asking about this? And it turns out they're coordinators and they're site owners. So when I posted videos, I got crickets. But like on the local level, seems to work a little better. Like, so what? I'm curious, Monica, what the feedback was when you did
yeah,
Spanish.
yeah, I have done some videos for patients and others for the community in general. But that I have one in specific that is explaining how to participate in clinical trials, and that one is the one that has more views. I got contact by one person that wanted to know how can she participated in a clinical trials that was not available in her home country, but in United States. So I tried to help that person, but it ended up with some immigration issues, right? Because she needed to
Mhm.
have the visa and all of that. But that's about it. That's basically, I mean, it's not that bad. I think it's important still to do it. But I do remember that we did a lot of videos specific to different, not talking about the specifications of the study, but talking in general the importance of that therapeutic area or that condition in particular, why it was so important to participate, and then also videos about the importance of, of the different communities to participate, like the diversity and how important it is for us to put our data there, because otherwise it's gonna be just or it's gonna work best on the communities that participate the most.
So it's
yeah,
not
which
really
Those are the kind of videos, yeah.
yeah.
yeah, which is something that I have noticed a lot, to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of drug that, like, when the patient comes in, would like come in for a visit or whatever, and they're on the same, let's say, blood pressure medication as like another patient, but a specific demographic, that blood pressure medication just doesn't work, and like there was like no way of getting it down. And I think that those communities need treatments too, like, and it's hard because those are the underrepresented communities.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously more education is needed, but that's part of us with the different communities working in research to educate more the public about it, and obviously starting from home, right? I know, like I get the same as you guys, that people, that my family sometimes doesn't understand, um but it's worth sitting with them and explaining them in detail and all of that. And then once they learn that, they get excited. It's funny, they get very excited because they understand then the importance of clinical trials. And that's also why we were mentioning before, it's important to educate also the younger generations, so they understand this process and they see it, um, they see the importance of it, right? They grow up and see it as natural, as something normal that needs to happen in order to get more treatments available, or even to learn about the specific condition that is new. Like, for example, what happened with the COVID, right? Now is when we're seeing the results of all that uh, crazy period. But yeah,
I
I
agree.
think what you touched on was that it's not a scalable solutions, but if done at each individual site level in each community, it's potentially scalable. Like Linda saying, she'll have a backpack giveaway in Huntington Park this coming August. Any opportunity I have to provide outreach, I do. It's so important to me. Any resources you can recommend to help, I'd love to hear feedback and recommendations. Do you guys know of it?
Honestly, I honestly think the best way is to like have like a foundation where we can get, and it was just crazy, but get sponsors to also like kind of fund, right? And we do like educational videos, but putting it out like as commercials or like things like that, and then have like that central page where we can educate people that are interested in finding out
Mhm.
how they can help. And then like you said, kind of like also get sites to do these outreaches where they're kind of in their community doing these things as well. Linda, one of the things that I know works very well is providing free food um, to people. I've seen that work really well with outreaches. And when you're providing them, you can add like little pamphlets of like educational information about studies and why they're important, things like that. But that's like what I have seen. The only way that we're going to be able to educate more people on research is where if you have like this central campaign, like this central like not like nonprofit where the sponsors would also kind of like donate funds to, where you can make that kind of like a central
awareness
campaign.
is like
Yeah,
it's like a PR for pharmaceuticals, because in
yeah.
reality, I mean, we have to work on two things. First, on educating people about the importance of research, and the other part that we need to overcome is also the bad reputation that pharmaceuticals have, right? Because that's against us, kind of.
Yeah, but
So
if you think about it, I just feel like people are just not well educated on it, right? So yeah, they understand how much that the pharmaceuticals, or not even the pharmacies, charge per drug, but do they know how much money really goes into it? Do they know how many drugs
they didn't
didn't
understand
make it and they
exactly.
spent
Hmm.
billions of dollars? Or like, like I feel like these are things that is part of that whole educating the population on what clinical research is, because it is a part of it, right? So
Yeah. Hmm.
a lot of the times, pharmaceutical companies sell medication to the pharmacies at pennies of the dollar, right? What happens is that the pharmacies, in order to accept insurance, certain insurance companies, right, they have to go through a contract where they're like, hey, you can accept our insurance, but if someone comes without insurance or self-pay, this is the minimum that you can sell it for. So they put like those limitations on the pharmacies in order to accept their insurance, right? Because then why would they need insurance if the pharmacy is selling it cheap? So that's really what the process is. But who knows that? Like, who
Yeah,
really?
well, yeah, we have a broken system,
Exactly. So
unfortunately.
that's what I'm thinking. Like, that's what we need, education, like educating people. Hey, look, like, yeah, some pharmaceutical companies, maybe, I'm not going to say that everyone's saints, because they're not. But we really look down at the whole process of things. It's really much deeper than just the pharmaceutical companies, because they actually sell it pretty cheap. And they always offer, like, if you do have insurance and you still can afford it, contact, let's say AstraZeneca, and we will help lower your copay. And they do so.
Just need someone to go out of their way to make it happen. Judy said, yeah, and some of the sponsors actually do. You have to use what they want. You have to leverage what they want to your advantage. So we had a big sponsor recently push for Native Americans, and it's very tough to get Native Americans. We are in Yuma, like there's 3 tribes around here. So we said, okay, we'll do it, but we need like some money, like Judy's saying. And then I actually reached out to Judy, and she provided me with some template flyers that I can submit, like obviously customized them, submitted them for our site. We got the funds. We were able to go out and do 3 community outreach events and ended up getting a few people interested. So, Judy said the challenge sites face is sometimes getting funding. Some are willing,
Yeah.
and some are not. And that's the thing. Like, if the sponsors that are willing to do it are gonna get the rewards, and the ones that don't, they're not.
But
Yeah.
They're
if you
just
think about it, usually the ones that are not willing are because they don't really have problems with recruiting the patient population. So the ones that are more willing to help are the ones that they know that the study recruitment is probably going to be a little harder. So they're
Yeah.
willing to put a little more money to ensure that they get the patients that they need. When they have, let's say, a vaccine trial, RSV, like they need 20,000 patients, but we know that that's not going to be a problem. That's not going to be a study that faces recruitment issues. So that one's probably going to be less likely to fund advertising. That's just, how it is. Like they think, well, do I have to waste the money on this when I need it for that kind of thing?
Yeah, but nowadays, for example, with the FDA new guidelines that every study must include the different communities, how is that gonna change?
It doesn't because so the only thing that it changes is where they look. So they just target California, they target Texas, they target Arizona, they target Florida, because they know that they have high populations of minority groups, so what they do is okay, we need this certain amount, well then we need this many sites in this area to ensure that we can get that population,
Very
so
good.
it's all strategic if you think about it, because they're still spending millions of dollars on a trial. And you have to remember, so studies usually, drugs don't get approved until they're at least 9 years in clinical studies. So like in the clinical studies past, like not like the animal ones, but like in humans. So it takes 9 years of research minimum in order to get something FDA approved, right? So taking that into account, how many billions of dollars are they putting? And then a lot of them, I don't know if you guys have ever been through it, but I know that when I was at the site level, they closed many studies at like phase 3 about to be approved because of safety at the end of the day. So it's like, that's billions of dollars they're not going to get back kind of thing, So it's just putting that also into perspective. Like, we all have a business, right? And you have to think, yeah, pharmaceutical companies have more money, but they also have more money on the line, and they're still business and they still want to make money. So they have to be strategic in what they put their money in. So it's like if it's a study that they don't think they're gonna have much problems, they're not gonna pay for recruitment or
Yeah.
advertising,
I agree.
but they're gonna go to sites that they know that they can provide those percentages that the FDA is requiring.
Yeah, it's all given. I mean, nobody's Mother Teresa here. Like,
Yeah.
the sponsors know the sites are in the certain areas where the underrepresented populations are. The sponsor's not going to go out of their way to make sites there. We've talked to sponsors about pushing for opening sites in certain markets that don't exist. They won't. So it all boils down to individuals, entrepreneurs, and people like LICR members. And that's part of the reason why we do this, is to get the word out. But there is money. It's just a matter of justifying it. And like Linda's asking right now, and this question's for Jen, Monica, Judy, and Chris. If Judy and Chris are there listening, chime in. It's budgets. I've partnered with a site who has contract with a sponsor for outreach events. Now we push to get approval for reimbursement for community outreach. Any tips for getting these items approved for reimbursement? Who wants to go first? I know you guys all have an opinion on this.
Yeah, I can. Okay, so this is a site that's partnered with a site, or who is this
Yeah,
exactly? So,
Linda wants to like start doing this herself for her
oh
sites now.
gosh. Okay, so I think what I can provide my feedback, I have been able to get advertising recruitment funds. There's a certain amount you'll get allotted. Let's just say between 5,000 to 15,000. I'm gonna throw that range out there. But you also have to prove you're gonna be able to do what you're gonna do and that there's some success with it, right? They want numbers, they want some kind of like you put all this time and effort and money into it. Like, what did you get out of it? Did you at least screen or recruit something? And so I would recommend like a recruitment plan, marketing plan, what Dan had mentioned. I have like a 15-page PDF thing of everything we do A to Z in the community, internally, database of what we do. And then I break down what the estimated cost of each of those items are, staff cost. And then usually I've been able to get a decent amount in our budgets from the beginning. That used to be questioned many years ago. Now it's just something that we're getting. And I've been able to go back and get more if we are obviously recruiting and screening throughout the study, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to get more if you're not doing anything. Like you just wasted all this money, you got no results, you're not going to get more. So there also has to be, you want all this, but you have to give something back, right? As you were mentioning, it's kind of give take because this is what we're supposed to do. So I think if you have some past success of doing this or history or numbers you can provide, you could put that in your marketing plan so you can start getting reimbursement for this. But in my opinion, on the studies I've worked on, this has been a little easier to get now, especially aside from
Yeah.
that, pre-screening, chart review fees are also coming.
Yeah, I agree with Julie. Yeah, I've been having the same situation. The sponsors are more willing, and the CROs are more willing to collaborate if the site is showing good results. Like in fact, I with one of the studies we did advertisement. It showed very good results, and they gave us the same amount of money again to do it again. So it has to be something that you can prove and obviously create a very good marketing plan and explaining why that specific marketing strategy or whatever that you're gonna do is gonna show good results.
I also want to add, is it like study specific outreach that you did? Like, because sponsors are going to be very particular about that as well. They want to make sure that you did outreach for their study. They don't want to pay for you to do it for other studies or for yourself.
Exactly.
Has to be something that you incorporated their study for. I also have dealt with sites asking for approval for things and stuff like that as well. And what they're saying is true. You need to have detailed explanation of why you need the money. Show receipts, show whatever it is that you have to ensure that you're like, hey, look, this is justified, because again, you could imagine how many how many sites ask for recruitment or advertising or reimbursement, and it's really not true. So it's something, that they monitor very closely because they want to make sure, like they said, that it's actually working as well. And if it is working, they'll be willing to pay for it again.
Wait,
To make
sites
sure
say they're going to use money for something and don't?
they have no justification for it. They have no like receipts. They have no proof of it. Yeah, they've done it plenty of times.
Chris, what's your thoughts on this? I was just joking about the sites. I was being sarcastic, but
That was going to be my comment. Dan's being sarcastic. That's my thoughts.
you gotta have receipts, like Jen said.
Mhm.
You gotta show that you're gonna do something. Community outreach is a very broad term. So what are you actually gonna do? Judy's PDFs are really good. Are we ready to talk about we're gonna have a white paper release soon? We're gonna have lots of this stuff in there, by the way. LICR is gonna launch a white paper. You heard it here first. Any day now, or any week now, I think. We're just waiting for Ashley to get back.
Yeah. So for me, I mean the advertisement and the community outreach is very particular to every site too, because what it works for one site doesn't mean that it's gonna work for another, because every site serves a different community. Yes, there are sites that are similar in the area where they are located. But I mean, every site is different too, right? And I mean, and what you were mentioning, Jen, earlier with the food and all of that, any goodie always works, because I do remember going, for example, to senior centers and offering, like, they give me the opportunity to do a presentation to talk about, let's say, an Alzheimer's study, right? And for the seniors to come to listen to it, all I needed was cookies, right? And coffee, so they will come and hear or listen to the presentation. They will ask questions. Yes, you will have some that will say, "Oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a guinea pig. That's why the pharmaceutical companies want us to do." But then you have to be patient too, right? Because not everybody have the same perspective about it. Not everybody's open. You might have negative feedback, but I mean, that's part of the job. I mean, you have to grow a little bit of a thick skin in research, because knocking the door doesn't mean that it's going to be open every single time. But in addition to that, many of these presentations show excellent results. We had many patients interested, people interested on listening more, people asking more questions, a lot of people curious about understanding what research is about, what it is that I need to do. And obviously many people interested on getting to try a different drug that they have been trying, because the drug that they have been trying probably is not working, or they have tried many different other um, medications and it hasn't shown very good results, or there is no medication for the condition that they have. So it is part of our job, and obviously for the sites to explore this more in the communities, and to educate more the communities about it.
I agree. And on that note, I think that the sites, not everything that we do as far as branding or marketing, we should get reimbursed. I mean, we do a good amount. Judy's site does a really good job of like Instagram, and she's empowered her staff. I follow her site's Instagram. They empower their staff to make like skits, and it's like,
TikToks.
yeah, it's not like you're gonna get a budget for that, like from a sponsor who's gonna actually care about that. Like that's not gonna help their study, but it might, but it really helps you as the site. So there is some element of like branding and marketing that we don't mind paying out of pocket. But when it comes to bigger things, when the sponsor's like, hey, well, we need more Native Americans, that's where I go, well, hey, we need some money, because we can't just go over there like with some cookies. We're gonna have to have like a whole day booth set up and cater like bring a taco truck or something. Um, but there are sites that do a lot. Like Judy's is one of them that does a really good job of that. And then we're trying to do that too through like interviewing business leaders in the community that have nothing to do with the research. So there's things like that that will be included in our white paper.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's sorry to interrupt, but I think it's an investment on the site that we're doing, right? What Dan is doing, Monica, myself, other sites are doing. We know we're not going to get reimbursed 100%, but at least we get reimbursed something to cover some of those costs. But a lot of the stuff we're doing, we are paying out of pocket. We're trying these new things, like Dan mentioned, Instagram, TikTok. Actually, that came originally, I think, from Dan doing all these videos. My other director was like, hey, let's try something different, right? And so we started doing all these different things to bring more exposure to research, to bring exposure to our site, but more for educational purposes. So people are not afraid of clinical research. And then hopefully maybe one of those ads they see, they'll respond to and they'll participate one day. So it is a long-term investment, and that's kind of how you build that community trust. But I think sponsors also need to understand, if that's the investment sites are doing in our communities, then why not assist them with something in that for the studies that they're working on, and be more open to that. And it might be outside the box, because guess what? Central recruitment campaigns do not work at my site. So we're trying all these other things to try to get these referrals to our site. Maybe at Dan Monica's site, they're more successful with those campaigns. It just varies. But I think just being open to out of the box ideas, that's what we need to be open in order to recruit the diverse participants that we need in these communities.
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, I agree. Linda is asking, how do we prove the success of the event of these types of cases? Um, like for example, I remember, I mean, going to this, I mean, creating this engagement or these events with the community, getting the patients or the people that are interested to register. So you have a database that you created from that event. That's a way to prove that you actually did a presentation and this is the people that register, or at least the amount of people. Or you can have like a log, like a log of people that was participating. So that way you have a proof that actually you have a group of people
Like a
present.
sign-in
I
sheet?
mean,
Would that
yeah.
be
You can
allowed,
take
Jen,
pictures.
or what would the sponsor say to this, Jen? If
Um, so I've actually seen, you know, you can do QR codes, and then
Monica
post them.
loves QR codes. You're talking the QR code queen.
Yeah, so you can do a list and just blank out the patient
Monica, there you go.
identifiers.
Another QR code from
Yeah,
Monica right
yeah,
there.
Mhm.
right.
Or just even just
Other,
giving them the numbers of it, like, right? So like we have this many people that signed up, we have this many things,
exactly.
like, you
Hmm.
know, you don't need to give
And
patient
yeah,
information.
and maybe out of this list of people, we got one patient or two patients that we're going to be pre-screening or screening or something like that, because now you're showing results, right? Or let's say, for example, I'm going to go to this event. The plan is to do this, this, and that. We're going to get the big member that joins the presentation to register. And after the presentation, we're going to provide, let's say, I'm back to the Alzheimer's. We're going to do a memory test, right? So now you're going to have a lot of people trying to do memory tests. And out of those patients, maybe you're going to have one or two or three patients that might look a good fit for that study. So
Yeah,
things like that, that you can actually have proofs right away that you're
yeah.
doing, that you're getting some results.
There was a sponsor that was asking for outreach for providing all the COVID tests, all of that, and a budget, but you had to do outreach and they needed to know where you were going to do it, how many people are going to be there, how many people are expected to be there, um, all those little details, and like, you know, percentage wise, statistically, how many people in your area like have COVID. And let's say it's, I don't know, 3%, then you can kind of calculate, well, we could have the potential of getting this many subjects, that might be positive, but it all depends. They know that it depends on, you know, the location and whether or not they're positive or not. But they do allow outreach. It just has to be study specific. So like COVID study, COVID testing, like a hypertension study, blood pressure, free blood pressure tests for anyone who signs up for the mailing list, like things like that.
Very good. And let's say what is, because I'm sure that you have seen a lot of different advertisements or marketing ideas from the sites. What have been the more unconventional ones that you remember?
Hmm. Ay, ay, ay. I've worked with a lot of like universities and things like that, hospitals, and they don't really do advertisements. So that's
No,
a really like,
Judy's site is way better.
yeah, that's definitely a question. You know, I actually want to say one thing. You know, one thing I think sites, it should be mandatory for sites to start having a nice, decent place for a monitor to monitor charts. Because you have no idea how many times I'm trying to talk to CRA about them, like, you know, checking charts or like, you know, doing STV at a site. And they're like, oh, I'm currently in a stairway, like doing, yes, it's common, doing like STV, things like that. So like I feel like having like a nice place for the monitors to do the work would be so nice.
What a concept.
Wow. So then when they come in and they actually get a conference room, they love it. No wonder they love it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
at the my mom's site, we used to have like a monitoring room that had like a little refrigerator and snacks, literally just in case, like
Wow,
just
Yeah.
there if they wanted to put
nice.
anything away. And the sponsors were like, oh my God, this is so nice. And I was just like, isn't this like typical like hospitality?
Yeah, yes, I was
For
gonna
me,
ask
like
that.
especially Hispanics, that this has something to do with Latinos maybe, but us Latinos, when someone's coming over to our house, we make sure they are hot, they are well fed, there's a lot of food, everything's clean,
There's
Yes.
snacks everywhere.
I'm sorry, but so I like in my mind, I'm like, why would anyone put a monitor on a stairway? You want them to be on your side, not against
Yeah.
you. If
Yeah.
I'm a monitor and you put me on a stairwell, I'm gonna find deviations. I'm gonna make sure I do.
Yeah, I learned to
Wow.
spoil very much the monitors since I started working at the beginning with Dan. Dan used to tell me, go and ask them if they want to eat something or make sure they're comfortable. And I learned right then,
Yeah.
and every single time it's being just like that.
Even if they say no, because they technically can't, just ask anyways, because you don't understand how much that means to them. Just like the fact that you're thinking of them.
But now that you mentioned that, we don't ask anymore. We just bring things and just put it there for them. Like if they come very early, because I know, for example, in my case, California has a bad traffic, so we know
Mm,
that the majority of, if they are driving, they will be driving very early in the morning. So we usually bring things like for breakfast, coffee, things like they have available if they feel like it to eat,
mhm.
right? But yeah, I think that's one relationship that you want to take care very well because you want to ensure, at the end of the day, that monitor is also part of your team in that study.
Exactly. Exactly. And not only that, you also have to keep in mind that if they have another study and they need sites,
All
who
that
are they going to
stuff.
want to work with? They're
We
going to
got
want
a
to work
nail
with.
salon right next to our site. Shout out to Jenny. They'll get their
And
nail
he's not
done.
kidding. It's the truth.
Oh yeah, we'll
I
get
know.
Jenny on
I've
the next
seen
webinar.
videos.
We'll get Jenny as the next host on the webinar. But yeah, I mean, anything you can do. Driving
Mhm.
them, I drove them on her to the airport the other day. It wasn't 10 minutes from the site, and in Yuma there's no traffic, but that meant like so much to her. She's like, "Wow, really? I don't need an Uber." I was like, "No, I'm going there anyways. Let's go." And like just little things like that. It's just smart business sense. It's not.
And it's being a human,
It's
right?
being
Because
a human being at the
it's
end of the day.
very easy to like be at a site and just see these people, see like project managers, see
Yeah.
CRAs, see them as like, okay, they work at the sponsor. That like, no, we're human. We have kids that drive us nuts. We have like husbands and wives that are probably not very nice to us all the time. We have bosses on top of us that are asking us to do things that is unrealistic, like, and it's such a change to just have someone just care about you as a person, not as a monitor, but just as a person, and I feel like that's very important.
I love listening and hearing what you're saying because that works for everything. It works for the monitors, it works for the sponsors in general, it works very much for the patients. There are no numbers that people participating in
Exactly.
clinical trials that also want to be taken care of. So I totally love that. I
Yeah,
love that
actually
you
talking
mentioned
about
that.
that, we had when I was on my mom's site, we had a patient and it was like an OCD trial, right? They finished the study, the drug worked really well on them, right? Because they had an open label part, so we definitely know that they had it. The patient had OCD and he was like, I cannot live without this medication. I can't. So most sites would be like, oh no, I'm not reporting to the FDA to get just this patient the medication. But I saw how important it was to him as a person. He's like, I can't live my life normally. I can't have a relationship. I can't have this. I went out of my way and I've been like filing FDA. I had to write a protocol. I had to do ICF. I had to do all of it just so that this patient could get that drug outside of the study. And like that means so much to people. You have no idea. Like this patient still texts me to this day telling me thank you for everything that I've done. And it's like that matters. Like treating people like they're human matters. Like, it's so easy in business to look at people as like money signs or like, oh, well, they can get me my studies or they can do this. No, just think of them as just a person, and like they have a hard life probably just as much as you do, or they probably go through just as much as you do or more, and like just understanding them and just becoming relatable, I feel like is so important in this industry because everything is so like well, like I don't know, and I just love to get people out of that little box. Like No, but how are your kids today? Like, how is this? Like, oh, you're not taking your PTO? Why aren't you taking your PTO? You better take your PTO. I'm going to make that an action item. Like, kind of just making them understand that they are important as people too.
Now I understand why you're so important in your company. Really, because soft skills, we talk about that with Dan. Soft skills are so, so important. Soft skills is that part process of working. We forget that human part is, I mean, that no AI, no nothing is gonna come and do that. It's just us as humans, and that's so important when it comes also for the patient retention. For, I mean, it doesn't have to be transactional every time, but oftentimes that behavior, or us taking care of that patient, or taking care of that employee, or taking care of somebody that works with you, is it makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does. They're more willing also to go out of the way for you because they see yourself. They see you going out of your way for them to cover them when they're not okay. So it's just the right thing to do. I mean, I don't do it because I'm like, oh, well, when I need them, they're going to help me. No, I do it because I should do it. And then thankfully, people are grateful. Some aren't, but most people are grateful and they return like that favor in the sense where they're like, okay, she's really nice to me. Let me make sure I do this and make sure she's good.
And all this stuff is how you attract and retain patients too, by the way, guys. Like,
Mhm.
it's at the small grassroots level. I agree with all this stuff. I told you guys you would like Jen. I told you Monica and Steven.
Absolutely love this interview. Absolutely love it. We have been on every single direction.
Yeah, we have. I think we've touched every little part.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, everybody. We already passed the usual hour, and very, very grateful for this conversation. I absolutely love your human part. That's why you bright so much. Your shine bright so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys even doing this for Latinos. It's not common. So this really means a lot to me.
Are you Hispanic?
I'm Cuban.
You speak Spanish?
I do.
Maybe we should do a video in Spanish, girl.
Okay, it might, some words might come out a little bad, but I can practice it. For the most part,
Yeah.
most words are good. It's just, some of the words are a little difficult, but I can do it. We can do it. I
Oh, let's
understand
do it. Let's do
100%.
it. Let's make it a plan then.
Sounds good.
Love it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
All
Like,
right.
subscribe,
Thank
comment,
you.
share.
Thank you.
Bye bye.